Yes, fam. Instrumental played, yes, tick. Countrymen in the house, yes, tick. Today, guys, I want to play a video clip. From this video clip, I'll give you my 2 cents. Then you are more than welcome to share your views in the comment section. So without wasting much of your time, let's watch this little clip.
In South Africa, we must not have the same voter proportion, or your vote must not have the same proportion as someone who's illiterate or who's mentally disturbed.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one, sure. But it would assist. Even in parliament, someone who's purely illiterate must not have the same, their vote must not carry the same weight as someone who has either expertise in field expertise. We could even do a recognition of prior exposure, not prior learning, but prior exposure in terms of, because now you have people who can read voting on legislation. To say, angivumi. Did you read? Ngitangivumi. You see, now you need at least someone who can say, I've read it, I understand it, I vote for it, or I don't support it. You see.
What this gentleman is saying raises an old question. Should all votes carry the same weight? The idea behind it has appeared again and again in different countries under different names, each time promising a more rational democracy. It's called weighted democracy. Weighted democracy is a political system where not all votes carry equal value. Voting power is distributed unequally based on certain qualifications or attributes. Throughout history, different societies have chosen different qualifications, be it education, property, income, age, mental competence, or social status. Some tied the right to vote to wealth or land ownership. Others used literacy or schooling as a test of readiness. In modern theory, this logic evolved into epistocracy, the idea that political power should belong to the knowledgeable, and even algorithmic weighting, where technology could in theory assign more influence to citizens judged better informed or more responsible. All versions share one principle, that democracy should reflect capacity rather than equality. In practice, it creates a hierarchy of citizenship, measuring who deserves a voice instead of trusting that everyone has one. Education-based voting. Education was often used as a test of political maturity. The belief was that educated citizens were more rational, less emotional, and better equipped to understand governance. This argument appeared in colonial Africa, in Jimmy Crow America, and even in early proposals for post-colonial systems. But access to education was never equal. The same elites who set the rules controlled the schools. As a result, education tests became tools of exclusion, rewarding privilege and punishing the majority. Education-based voting collapsed because it confused knowledge with wealthy. It failed to recognize that civic understanding can grow through experience, not just through schooling. Property and income-based voting. Property and income tests were among the earliest forms of weighted democracy. They assumed that those who owned land or paid high taxes had a greater stake in society and therefore deserved a stronger political voice. This logic shaped Britain's system until the mid-20th century and was central to colonial governance across the empire. It appeared fair on paper, the responsible invested citizens helping guide national destiny, but it gave power to a narrow class whose interests were economic, not civic. As industrial workers built the economy, yet remained voiceless, this system's legitimacy collapsed. Britain's Reforms Acts of 1832, 1867, and 1884 widened the franchise, but plural voting, where property owners and graduates voted more than once, continued until 1948. Only then did Britain truly embrace one person, one vote. The same pattern repeated in Rhodesia, where property qualifications maintained white minority rule until 1980. Both systems ended when the excluded majority refused to be governed by wealthy. Some advocate age-based weighting. Age has also been proposed as a way to weight democracy. Some argue the young should have more power because they will live longer with the consequences of today's decisions. Others claim older voters are wiser and should guide society's direction. Neither argument could hold. Experience does not always equal to wisdom, and youth does not always equal to foresight. Any attempt to rank voters by age risks dividing generations instead of uniting citizens around shared interest. Modern democracy settled for a minimum voting age, not a hierarchy, just a threshold of participation. Mental competence. In many countries, voting was once restricted to those judged sane or of sound mind. The idea was to protect the process from instability or irrationality. But mental competence tests became political tools used to disqualify dissidents, the poor and the disabled. They blurred the line between medical judgment and social prejudice. Over time, most democracies recognized that citizenship cannot depend on psychological approval. Equal rights replaced this discriminatory test, and mental competence was separated from political participation. Social status and race. Race and class have been the most visible basis for weighted voting. From Jim Crow America to apartheid South Africa, citizenship was literally divided by identity. These systems justified exclusion as responsible governance. They claimed some races or groups were not yet ready for political participation. But behind that language was fear of losing privilege and power. Both systems fell the same way. In the United States, the civil rights activism exposed the hypocrisy of literacy tests and poll taxes. In South Africa, political negotiation and resistance dismantled apartheid and brought universal suffrage in 1994. Weighted democracy by race did not fail because it was unpopular. It failed because it could no longer disguise its purpose. Some advocates for AI to decide who can vote. Algorithmic and knowledge-based weighting. They call it epistocracy. In modern times, the idea retained under a new name, which I've just mentioned, epistocracy, from the Greek episteme, which is knowledge, and kratos, rule. It means rule of the knowledgeable. Thinkers like Jason Brennan argued that democracy gives too much influence to uninformed voters. They proposed weighting votes according to civic knowledge, or even restricting suffrage to a competent public. Some extend this idea to algorithmic systems, where technology or artificial intelligence could in theory analyze a citizen's education, record, or engagement and assign more or less voting weight automatically. Some see this as progress, a data-driven way to make democracy smarter, but the questions remain the same. Who builds the algorithm? Who defines knowledge? And who protects those it undervalues? Algorithmic weighting fails the same reason all other did. It replaces trust with measurement, and democracy cannot survive when its citizens are treated as data points. History makes the pattern clear enough. Every version of weighted democracy, no matter the form or century, collapsed not because people rejected logic, but because logic was used to justify exclusion. Each generation believed it had found a fairer test of worth, and each discovered that the test simply protected the powerful. The idea keeps returning because it appeals to fear, the fear that the majority might choose wrongly. In times of instability, people look for order disguised as logic. Weighted democracy offers that comfort, that the qualified will make better decisions for everyone. But history shows that what begins as protection always turns into control. It is not democracy made smarter, it is democracy made smaller. Supporters of weighted democracy often ask, how can people who can't read and don't understand policy make good decisions? But democracy isn't a literacy exam. It is a way of aggregating lived experience. Even those who can't read a law feels its effects every day on work, health, housing, and security. Their practical knowledge matters for collective judgment. History also shows that expertise and education are no guarantee of correct or just outcomes. Rulers and elites with formal training have repeatedly failed. Pre-World War I Europe, political and military elites confident in their strategy steered nations into catastrophic war. Colonial administrations, educated officials armed with expert theories, misread the societies they governed and institutionalized injustice. Rhodesia and apartheid South Africa, highly literate minorities maintained racial systems that eventually imploded. Modern technocrats, financial experts, credentialed economists, and policymakers have presided over global crisis, proving that intelligence alone cannot prevent error. Collective judgment, the wisdom in numbers, helps correct individual errors. Participation is not perfection. It is the mechanism by which diverse experience balance and test expertise. Democracy protects itself not by excluding citizens on the basis of knowledge, but by trusting the aggregate judgment of all. Weighted democracy or epistocracy has appeared under many names: proper franchise, literacy tests, qualified franchise, responsible government. Each began as a reform, each ended as exclusion. It survived because it flatters the educated and comforts the powerful. But democracy's purpose was never to reward intelligence. It was to recognize equality. Every citizen counts once, not because of what they own or know, but because they belong. The moment we start weighing voices, we stop practicing democracy at all.